Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with the Green Scorpion. This just went uploaded a few days ago. Hope you got some sunscreen, because we're going to the top 10 video game desert levels. Yeah. Hope we got plenty of water, too. This one's gonna be a scorcher. Kind of fitting considering it's July, and heat's picking up here. So, shall we get to the list and see which desert to avoid, I guess? Be sure to subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's check it out. Here we go.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
Interesting. 4, 3, 2, 1. I thought the Gerudo Desert might be here, but let's see. Futaba's Desert, well, alright. Let's see.
The desert. Count how many sand is here, Omega. That's your first mission.
Why the fuck would you make him do that?
It passes
It's
the
gonna
time.
take so long. Shadow, it's gonna be so annoying.
I'm curious what the biggest number is.
No, he's just gonna be counting forever.
Perhaps.
Shadow. Oh god. Was this an outtake or something?
Shadow, what have you brought? This is your fault.
Only 30 million sand particles in this desert.
See, that was easy.
Fuck. Oh my god.
Jesus Christ, don't scare us, bro. Yeah? Okay, you're just dropping
Greetings
something off.
everyone, the Green Scorpion here, and a while back
enough.
when I remade my top 10 water levels, a number of you expressed interest in a series of videos covering different recurring video game biomes. And while I'm not quite ready to devote myself to a themed marathon, the idea intrigued me. I never had a personal issue with water levels, I just knew that they were a common point of contention for other gamers. The cliche that I usually dread the most is the desert level. As early as a second world, some games will drop you unceremoniously in these arid environments unsupportive of life. At worst, these levels bog down your movement options with deleterious ground, drain you of vitality from the heat and lack of resources, or just bore you to death with an empty expanse of nothing. That at least was my original impression, which I'd never truly examined until now. As I combed through
fair
several
enough.
games to find the best deserts, however, I found that many of them can be quite lively. You get the exotic backing of acoustic guitars, sitars, and maracas, a color palette so bright you can feel the vitamin D through your TV screen, and a Lawrence of Arabia-esque spirit of adventure. This group actually got hard to narrow down towards the end, but we laid down some rules to help us sift through the sand.
Go ahead.
Not that sand is an absolute must. Scientifically speaking, a desert is only defined by the amount of precipitation it gets every year, or rather, the lack thereof. Our minds might go to subtropical deserts like the Sahara or the Kalahari, but there's also cold winter deserts like the Nevada or Colorado deserts. Even tundras like in Siberia are technically deserts. But I'm going to disqualify any
let's just
cold
stick to the warm,
environments
huh?
that could be better described
Tundra
as
could be
ice.
its own list, huh?
And like with water levels, where I insisted swimming be involved, I want levels where the topography actually affects the gameplay experience in some way, be that through level
see that.
design, enemy variety, or some other mechanics. Once that's met, the desert influence on presentation, graphics, music, and story can be examined for bonus points. Lastly, because this list was so hard to narrow down, I couldn't include some games that feel desert themed in the majority of their world, just because I didn't know what part of them to even call a desert level. The irradiated fields of Fallout, the alien wastelands of Borderlands, and the lawless frontiers of Red Dead Redemption all receive honorary mentions for me today. And with that,
Yeah,
grab
fair
yourself
enough.
a cold beverage,
Pretty much
some
all
lunch,
at desert
and
level.
Let's make some tracks. These are the top 10 video game desert levels.
Like I said, hope you got some water. Like we're gonna need it. Let's go.
We begin our desert level journey with,
Journey.
well, Journey. And let me say up front that this was pushing my guidelines for this list. If you never played Journey and only knew it from footage of people's videos, you might get
Fair.
the impression that this whole game is a desert, but that's not actually
Not all of
true.
them.
Only like half the game is. And it's such an effective sequence that I think it warrants mention anyway. Journey isn't the first game to take a minimalist, no-dialogue approach to story, but it certainly popularized the vague, artistic experience game. To start,
That
you
does.
find yourself in an endless sandy expanse. Naturally, you move forward, stumbling over the first dunes to see a massive mountain in the distance, And wordlessly, the game has already instilled in its player a goal. Get there, wherever there is. Journey doesn't draw visual influence from any one source in particular. It's more up to you to imprint your own meaning based on your own experiences. And for me, it was hard
like
not
there's
to
some
get a
Islam
biblical
influence
vibe
here,
from
huh?
this. Deserts are prevalent in religious stories, especially Abrahamic religions. Poor lost souls wandering the fruitless wastes of the world until some divine light from above gives them a glimpse of a fabled promised land. In minimalizing this idea to sand and a mountain in
yeah,
the
it actually
distance,
does.
Journey
I feel like
invokes
that would
a
be a
sense of
promised land.
spirituality that still manages to remain non-denominational. It takes a while for you to get anywhere when you start a new file. Until you collect these sashes, you can't really jump very far, making the initial segments slow but mercifully short. You explore some ruins to get a feel for the game's physics, what to search for, what to collect, after which you emerge into our true number 10 for this list, the Pink Desert, where the setting sun bounces beautifully off this wavy landscape. It's almost blinding. Now, there are actually things to see if you walk off the beaten path. Extensions to your scarf so you can improve your jump, friendly kite creatures
Fair.
that will show you to other secrets, and plenty of hidden nooks and crannies, including a single flower growing in the sand. In reality, an Easter egg for the studio's other game, Flower, but not knowing that on my first playthrough, this incidental object fascinated me. The only organic-looking life form in this entire game, besides ourselves of course, though I think the jury's still out on that even. Without a guide, there's no
Fair.
easy way to know that you found everything, and you could just march past it all on your way to the mountain. It's all up to you. Either way, you continue to some more silent bits of lore and a race down the sand dunes that's so smooth and carefree. Journey's so hard to describe in concrete terms that I can't quantify it next to the other levels on the list, and that's why it's only number 10. But it's such a
Fair.
beautiful art
It's
piece
a-
in
kind
and
of an open
itself
book in a
that I
way,
just
you know?
had to include it. The opening moments and the serenity of the Pink Desert are small and beautiful experiences that form a foundation for the rest of the game. And I think most of us remember this desert more than the mountain at the end of the trek. It just goes to show that it's not about the
The
destination.
destination
It's
is
about
the journey.
sojourn.
Okay, I see where you went there. Alright, next. Number 9. Calm one with 9.
Let's check in on our favorite hedgehog. While
Oh,
Water
Sonic?
is Sonic's more famous
Sindopolis.
kryptonite, he's also had his fair share of bummer desert levels. Sand tends to cushion objects and slow things down, but that's nothing the Boost era can't handle. I've already put Aquarium Park from Sonic Colors on
So,
the water
a
levels
6?
list.
Sorry, I had to
and
go there.
Years ago, Dude and I picked Holoska from Unleashed for our Ice Levels collab. My first candidate here was the Arid Sands, another great level that exemplifies the Unleashed Day Stage formula. But for good measure, Comic Foil and I queued up some gameplay from Sonic Mania, and we were having so much fun just watching it that we knew we had a winner. Most of Mania's stages are remixes of levels from past games, but Mirage Saloon is a completely new concept, taking the blue blur to the Wild Wild West. Now with more robots. As soon as the
magic.
music drops,
Sorry,
you're hit
okay.
with that famous whistle straight out of a Sergio Leone movie. Giddy up, partner, no need for a horse, I'm ready to blaze a trail and... Oh, we can just take Tails' plane too. Sure, that's
works.
fine. So we start with this flying section that's a callback to the Sky Chase Zone from Sonic 2, and we're accosted by one of the hard-boiled heavies, and Knuckles falls to his death.
Oh no.
While not
Bye,
my favorite
Knuckles.
way to spend half
Sorry
a
about
stage,
that.
it does show off that gorgeous Mesa background. It looks like something straight out of classic Sonic, but let's be real, the original Genesis could never have managed this. Then partway through, you swoop down and it becomes a train level, and you know how much I love those. And
Yeah.
Eggman's the conductor with a little hat. And there's a big goofy hand and revolver that shoots you back up in the air for a mini-boss against a giant caterpillar of all things.
Would you
Whoa.
still love me if I was a wham?
No.
Sonic Mania
Not in
is
that
so
case.
good at creating these little moments, and the first act has 3 of them in a row. And oh my god, is that Fang the Sniper?
Yep.
So you're gunned down,
He's
and
back.
Act 2
Oh,
gives
geez.
us a more traditional Sonic
Knuckles,
level,
welcome
if
back.
you want to call running across spraying seltzer water traditional. Not to mention busting in and out of taverns, bouncing off the bar stools, running across piano keys, and even some casino pinball sections. And you eventually square up against Heavy Magician, who it turns out can copy Fang the Sniper, Bark the Polar Bear, and even Bean the Dynamite from Sonic the Fighters. It might have been more on brand if this Heavy was a desperado or something. Maybe we could have done a more thematic Mexican standoff. The Blue, the Blur, and the Eggy. But I'm not going to complain about a reference
Eggy.
this obscure. Back before Sonic Superstars, this was the first time we'd seen Fang in years. And he is kind of a cowboy himself. And if you want more desert,
the hat.
well, it turns out that Knuckles didn't die on impact. On his adventure, you get an
that
entirely
was much
different
rejoicing.
Act 1 in the less developed canyon nearby. It's nice to have a level built around Knuckles' specific abilities. And look how the background lights up when you leave the rocks into an open area, like you're coming out of the shadows into the blazing sun. I love that. Admittedly, the only thing keeping this level so low is its brevity. You'll breeze through it pretty fast. But with the alternate paths and charming interludes, it's a memorable 5 minutes. To be fair, Arid Sands Day is also short. We could have bolstered it by including the night stage, but after replaying Mirage Saloon, I just wasn't interested in replaying those Werehog segments, man. I don't even hate the Werehog, but next to Mania, it's a drag. I think that says it all right there.
I can imagine. Next up, 8. Alright, little Mania here.
Almost
What's
unanimously voted the best game in the series, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse sees our heroic half-genie teaming up with her swashbuckling rival Risky to explore a set of islands. Around the middle, we'll find the aptly named Tan Line Island, home to blazing sands and rad-as-hell scorpion folk. At surface level, the island's pretty
cool.
simple. It's flatter and more horizontal than previous islands, and fairly short in length. But that's a blessing in disguise, seeing as you'll need to run back and forth here a few times. This is a Metroidvania after all, and a couple of ongoing quests and character arcs progress here. You'll see Squid Baron hanging outside the locked temple, trying to enjoy a vacation during his mid-boss crisis. You also have one of my favorite platformer tricks, the old quicksand you're supposed to fall into for a collectible. Classic. And you have one of the 3 hidden sarcophagi that you'll need to learn the entrance code for that aforementioned locked temple. Once you found all 3, you'll enter into one of the game's more memorable interludes. Okay, so this desert society has lost their princess, and they have a serious case of face blindness, leading them to rescue Shantae and protect her within the temple against her will with this outfit. Full-on slave Leia.
Pretty much.
Tatooine is also a desert, but anyway. Not only that, the other 3 girls of the cast are all here rocking metal bikinis, much to everyone's dismay except Roddy Tops, who's just having the time of her own death. But seriously, dang, Risky Boots. More like risque boots. Part of me wants to protest, but then again, I have a poster of these 4 girls to my immediate left while recording this, so I'm in no place to argue cheesecake ethics. Let's just try and have fun here. This part of the game plays out like a stealth mission, which might not sound like fun, but it's pretty easy, and it's got that bopping theme behind it. Plus, I find the banter between our heroes just fun and charming. Once that misunderstanding is behind us, you'll get the golden pickaxe that you need to enter the island's true dungeon. 2 dungeons for the price of 1, baby. And this one's more traditional for Shantae, incorporating classic movie pyramid spike traps that you can flip into safe platforms with your attacks. And soon you'll acquire Risky's Cutlass, which lets you Scrooge McDuck pogo off these spikes to make things easier.
Boing.
And finally, you'll encounter the dungeon's master, Squid Baron, who in a tearful revelation decides he's just destined to be a filler boss. You beat his ass, give him a new lease on life, and you go on your merry way. So yeah, you don't spend a lot of time out in the desert heat this time around, but so long as there's still Sandy and Satari, I consider desert temples to be a part of a desert level. And while these shenanigans didn't have to be in a desert, the setting does heighten them. It'd be harder to justify the harem outfits in a snow world anyway. And Sky getting a boyfriend only for him to immediately be petrified by a mummy's curse just makes me laugh. Tan Line Island is a microcosm of everything I want out of a Shantae game. Waves of enemies to flip my hair at, hokey hijinks with the cast, punctuated with solid dungeon crawling, and music I want to sway my hips to. It's a little too simple to rank any higher, but it's a spicy variety of half-genie goodness.
I mean, with Shantae, simpler is better sometimes. Alright, that's us platforms in general. You gotta love them, I guess. But let me know, what do you guys think's good platformer? Simple? Complex? Mix of both? Let me know. So, we had Journey. We had... Sorry, I'm trying to, remember off the top of my head. Sonic Mania, now Shantae. Let's see who's next. 7's coming up.
As a compromise for including the Metroidvania harem scene, I've allowed my co-writer to include one of his favorite games of all time. This is Gobi's Valley from Banjo-Kazooie. Not that I mind its inclusion. Banjo-Kazooie is a masterclass in designing 3-dimensional playgrounds that I honestly think hold up even to this day. You never need an in-game map because every level is dotted with memorable landmarks that stick out in your mind. Starting next to a tiny oasis, you meet a parched sapling where Kazooie says maybe the most mimetic line in the game.
Oh, here we go. That's your nuts, Buck.
And you quickly trot your way over the first hill, spying a massive sphinx in the distance as the punchy reed pipe music fades into a powerful procession of horns. This is why you hire Grant Kirkhope, folks.
Thanks,
The space
Brett.
in question is named
don't
Jinxie,
say-
and not only does he contain a challenge room with tricky flying carpet jumps,
Jinjo!
he also talks to you about his stuffy nose. He's surprisingly courteous. So how do you help him? You shoot some eggs in there, of course. Bless you. Further up the
Pretty
hill
much.
is another pack of temples and jiggies.
Oh, yeah,
Some
the
highlights
kid
include
actually-
this cute matching puzzle and the maze of King Sandybite.
Wait, wasn't this where you can do the cheat codes?
I may laugh, but this labyrinth has a time limit, and the music ramping up note by note before you're crushed to death gives me serious anxiety. Eventually, you can free the titular Gobi, an elderly camel
Hey,
that you
Gobi.
proceed to bully for the rest of the level. First to water the aforementioned sapling, and again
Just
to get a
bonk.
honeycomb piece up on this ledge.
Bonk.
In a funny bit of continuity, he says afterwards that he's sick of this place.
That's
and
it,
goes
I'm
to live
leaving
in
this
the
desert
lava
too.
level. And in the sequel, that is in fact where you find him again, where you can proceed to bully him some more.
Again.
I do want to address this level's
Poor
weird
Gobi.
dependency with Freeze Easy Peak, though. Most of
I guess the
levels in
game designer
game
got
can be
sit on
completed in
camel
one
too many
go, but
times.
These two in the middle each require power-ups unlocked in each other's worlds. The aerial beak bomb in Freeze Easy and the speedy turbo trainers in Gobi's Valley. That can be annoying in the original version of the game where the musical notes you collect reset when you leave a level. So my advice is just don't go for the notes until you have both abilities, and thankfully this is one of the easier note collection stages in the game. So
Yeah,
yes,
fair.
this level is very nostalgic for the 90s kids, but why is it good enough to be number 7? Two things, flow and scale. A lot of games use sand as difficult terrain, something that makes you
that.
move slower. But in Banjo,
Or
all
sand
of the sand
traps.
is either regular or piping hot, meaning it's never slowing down the pace, it's just an obstacle to avoid at times. If anything, the pace here is faster. Sure, there are some steep slopes, but at this point
Like
you
that?
probably know to just talent trot everywhere to save time. You unlock the run faster item here, and flight pads are very easy to find. There's even some hoops to fly through for extra goodies. And though deserts are known for being vast fields of mostly nothing, Gobi's Valley is the exact opposite. Rare chose to pack all of the major landmarks close together here, rather than make the desert big for the sake of bigness. A problem
Yeah,
Banjo
fair.
2E can sometimes fall into. If
Like
I had
that.
to choose between impressive size and meaningful content, I'm gonna pick the latter every time. First-time players will see in Gobi's Valley a wealth of opportunities for adventure, one where you can spend hours searching each nook and cranny
Whoa.
for jinjos and music notes. Veterans, on the other hand, find an express route to breeze through in 20 minutes with just enough challenge to feel like it's pushing back against you. For me, it's the timed run up the pyramid. It takes me at least 2 to 3 tries to get it right.
God.
I'm happy to have a 3D desert where I spend more time playing in it rather than just walking through it. Or talent trotting through it. Remember,
Yeah,
any
you know,
second you walk
gotta
without
let
holding
them
Z
try.
is just wasting time.
True. Woohoo! What? Hey!
Let's return
Sorry, I
for a
threw it.
moment to our Gatekeeper journey. Fans of the channel will know that when I have an entry that's hard to rank because it's so different from the others, I usually throw it somewhere in the middle. Despite that, the Pink Desert got stuck at the bottom, but there are 2 reasons for that. One, I admittedly like the idea of using one of the best intros of all time to open the list. And 2,
Why not?
there's another vibe-heavy game that I wanted to put at number 6. Outer Wilds
Oh,
is
wow,
an
some-
interesting game, as it's based solely on exploration and requires careful research and perception to make progress. I'll try not to spoil anything major because the
Fair.
puzzles in this game are most satisfying when you figure them out for yourself. But talking about it might point you in the right direction of things, so if that bothers you, here's your time code. We good? We're good. So the solar system of Outer Wilds works on a Majora's Mask style time loop. Except instead of following NPCs in their various schedules, you're following celestial bodies as they change their position and state. Nowhere is that more prominent than the Hourglass Twins. These two are a binary system, meaning that in addition to being very close to the sun, they're miniature planets orbiting one another. One is the Ash Twin, and it's just a big ball of sand. The other, the Ember Twin, is a scraggly valley hiding a network of tunnels where an ancient alien race once lived. But as time passes, the bizarre astrophysical circumstances causes sand to slowly flow from one planet to another like an hourglass. There's a lot of questions that can only be answered here. A high-energy power station experimenting with dark matter, a hidden trial that teaches the mechanics of teleporting quantum objects, even the skeleton of a great anglerfish revealing the secrets to avoiding the very much alive anglers on another planet. Seriously, that is welcome information. Those fuckers are terrifying. But
Ew.
they
Yeah,
are
no
nothing
kidding.
compared to the
That is
deadliest
creepy as hell.
organism in the galaxy,
Yikes.
cacti. Silly, I know, but when your ability to breathe hinges on an airtight suit, and you need to quickly navigate around these little bundles of needles, yeah, you see the problem here, right? At any rate, to work
Just
out these secrets, you'll need to
and you're
think
dead.
fourth dimensionally and plan your excursions around the flow of the desert sand. You'll need to work fast to explore the Ember Twin before the alien ruins are completely buried. On the other hand, the Ash Twin requires some patience, as the emptying sand reveals a universal teleportation system that works off the alignment of the planets. This acts as a hub for a number of otherwise inaccessible locales. But that just means that you'll need to move extra fast to make up for the time you spent watching the sand move. And despite how hectic it can be to try and accomplish your current goal under these time constraints, the twins also excel at this game's patented atmosphere, with a lot of pathos given for the aliens that once settled here. Their skeletons litter what's left of their homes,
Yikes.
logs of their day-to-day lives adorning the walls, which you can luckily read at your leisure since time stops whenever you're translating ancient script. And yeah,
cool.
I'll admit, I got a tear in my eye following the path that they once used to escape this planet, nearly running out of air on my way, and realizing that the trees they planted were still here to greet me with life-saving oxygen.
Nice.
Deserts are harsh environments,
Handy.
particularly one so close to the sun, but somehow these people made a life here, if only for a time. Seeing them gone now only makes you appreciate life more, and motivates you to find a way
Hey,
to
they can
save
do
the
it, we can
solar
do it, you
system
know?
as the grains of the hourglass relentlessly tick on. Unique, poignant, and beautiful, the Hourglass Twins are an all-time amazing set piece.
Amen. Does look pretty. Alright, number 5 though. Move on from space.
If you think Sonic has
Oh,
a bad
Fire
history
Emblem.
with desert levels, get a load
boy.
of Fire Emblem. Most games in the series have at least one desert map, and while they can often be very memorable for their place in the story, they share the common ground of being fucking slow. I hate sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it
And
lowers
there's
my
Star
unit's
Wars.
movement stat. These missions will usually pair this with time-sensitive side objectives that are too far away unless you rush a flying unit into harm's way, and most infantry are hindered in this terrain while horses and armor knights are slowed to a crawl. They'll hide little goodies on random tiles, but it takes a high luck stat just to pick them up. And if you're trying to get everything in these levels, that guarantees
Good luck.
several turns of doing nothing at the end of each fight. All in all, Fire Emblem desert maps are tedious at best, aggravating at worst. So what if I told you that the latest Fire Emblem game, which I've been pretty critical about,
Really?
handled
Echoes?
this trope pretty darn well.
Really?
After facing a major defeat in Illusia and losing most of your OP Emblem waifu rings, and Husbando rings, Alir and company flee to the desert of Solm for a 5-chapter stretch. Usually that's 5 desert levels too many for this series, but this arc actually turns out to be the ray of sunshine that our heroes need to
Really?
get back on the offensive. When Fogado first showed up, I thought, dude, what are you doing on a horse? That's a death sentence out here. But Fogado's here to show us the new and improved sand stats. Regular sand no longer affects movement at all. Instead,
yes.
you have quicksand tiles which lower a unit's movement by 3,
By 3.
only if they start their turn there. If you can run through a patch of sand in one go, there's no penalty,
Yep.
which is already a huge improvement. Plus, flyers and spellcasters still ignore the effect, preserving the only good part of Fire Emblem's desert combat, putting a
Nice.
spin on what classes you should prioritize without outright forbidding other options. If you want
Nice.
to park a heavy defense unit in the quicksand to wall off the slowed enemies, that's your prerogative.
Why not?
It gets even better when you realize that you can use certain abilities to push enemy units into the quicksand, slowing them down drastically on their next turn. Solm also introduces a new promoted unit, the Wolf Knight. And even though there's no disadvantage to horses out here anymore, I like the flavor of the Solmese riding giant canines adapted to traversing the dunes. They even
Actually,
get
it
the
does look
class
pretty
exclusive
cool.
ability, Hobble, which further lowers enemy movement, synergizing
Dang.
great with the surrounding
Nice.
quicksand.
Yeah.
Plus, it just makes it safer for you to use your unencumbered mages. There's a lot of variety in these missions too. Chapter 12 is the series standard Sandy Skirmish, but Chapter 13 gives us a crowded bazaar full of alleyways that you have to plug up. Fortunately, this is where you get Marin, likely your first Wolf Knight, and Tamara, who's the tankiest unit not to be wearing any armor and shows up with her Radiant Ike stand. And that might be a good time to mention that everyone from Solm is named after a dessert. Fogado is affogato, Marin is meringue, Tamara is tiramisu, etc.
Tiramisu?
Which is really cute considering that this is a desert.
Yep.
Desert. They
There you
never
go.
say this pun out loud, but even I'll tip my hat to this one. Seriously, did Toriyama name these characters? Chapter 14 then brings the fight into an Arabian palace. Chapter 15 drops the army into a sandy temple where they meet the obligatory dancer character Seedal. And Chapter 16 concludes our Somme campaign with a beachside map containing giant monsters, a new sacred emblem, and 2 new units, Rosado and Goldmary. I have to admit, I was dragging my feet through the first half of this half-assed campaign, but the sudden loss of resources straight into the most energetic string of chapters in Engage woke me up. And that music is a jam. Best track in the game, if you ask me.
Dang, that is good. That's a carnival.
Like Aquarium Park from Sonic Colors, if you can make good on a trope that's historically failed in a series, you've got my attention. And if that trope becomes the highlight of the game, you have my respect.
Oh, I think I know what's coming up next. Wait, I want to leave.
Our list has been mostly exteriors so far, so let's talk about desert dungeons. We've had a couple mixed into larger desert areas, but if Tanline Temple or Dancer in the Ruins were on their own, I don't think they would have made it. I want the desert theming to influence the level design, and those examples mostly just use it aesthetically. So here's a dungeon where the arid region isn't just present, but essential to the experience. In Persona 5, the Phantom Thieves raid a number of palaces, symbolic worlds inside the minds of troubled people that reflect their warped view of the world. 3 times
Mostly
in a row,
it's just
you defeat
greedy
corrupted
bastards,
by entering
jerks,
their
and
palace
all that.
stealing their will to do
But,
evil.
well, you know.
And by the rule of 4s, the next palace presents a twist to the formula. This time, you're hired by Futaba, a girl slightly younger than the main cast, to enter her own palace and do what you do best, to silence the voices in her head. This palace takes the form of a grand pyramid. 3 times already, P5 has used its palaces to characterize their owners. Kamoshida, for example, sees himself as a king, so his palace warps the school into his castle. Simple enough. But this 4th palace offers the deepest character study yet for a character who's going to be very important for the rest of the game. Notably, the palace contains not just the pyramid, but a huge empty desert around it that takes hours to traverse by van, representing the crippling isolation Futaba feels. And fortunately, those hours are traversed in a cutscene.
Got forced into, you know, the story.
The only people out here are bandits out to get Futaba, from whom you need to retrieve a stolen papyrus scroll before you can even begin exploring. Futaba's shadow both welcomes the Phantom Thieves and leads them into danger, showing how Futaba yearns for companionship on some level, but is too paranoid.
Still actively pushes them away.
She clearly has an interest in Egyptian and Arabic folklore. Hell, her hacker alias is Alibaba. After all. And her eventual persona is the Necronomicon, the dark grimoire from H.P. Lovecraft, which, in those stories, originates from the Middle East. A self-proclaimed techie, the traps in Futaba's dungeon are more cybernetic versions of the classic Hollywood tomb obstacles, right down to the Indiana Jones boulders. In fact, one of my favorite parts of this dungeon is when you solve a puzzle that breaks the boulder dispenser. Seeing all these killer boulders lined up like a skee-ball return and jumping across them was always funny to me. This dungeon also does the best with theming the personas you meet here, including Sandman, and the Egyptian deities Isis, Thoth, and Anubis. But more importantly, this dungeon is a pyramid because Futaba is an agoraphobic shut-in who is resigned to turn her bedroom into her own tomb. Futaba blames herself for her mother's death, as told by a series of hieroglyphics, and at least part of her feels like she deserves to be locked away from the world as punishment. Fortunately, the teens resolve to save Futaba from herself, and instead of fighting her shadow, we fight a sphinx representing the guilt Futaba feels over her mother and its control over her life. And
luckily for us, we're able to wake up.
Futaba's shadow becomes her persona so that she can help us as the new navigator. Awesome stuff. Now, players have been split on where this tomb lands on the ranking of the palaces, even after Royal spiced up some of its puzzles, and I can see why. Some of the sections are repetitive, especially this climb up the sandy pit you've been dropped into, the Anubis enemies take way too long to kill, and I got really tired of Mama Sphinx's voice. Like, yeah, I get it, you're guilting Futaba, please shut up. But personally, I enjoy the dungeon crawl.
Yeah, it's definitely a
no Zelda, but it gets the job done. And I like how each section takes you back to the central hallway that you're progressing through with the hieroglyphics, and I love the themes of this chapter, highlighted by the amazing track, The Days When My Mother Was There. And if it feels like a slog, don't feel like you gotta take it all in one go. Like the game says, take your time. I, for one, appreciate the risk that they took to tell this story in a slightly headier
much.
dungeon layout that may take a little longer than necessary.
All according to plan.
Nice work, team.
That, or if you spend some time grinding, you should be able to get through it. Just depends how you plan the routes, you know? Some days you just gotta make sure you set yourself up to confront the final boss. Remember, you gotta send the calling card beforehand, so once you're done, you're done. Though, there is time, like you said, take your time, because if you speed it up, there's not a lot you can do. Like, remember, the palaces are usually waiting for you. They're not going anywhere until that deadline. So you can spend some time raising social links, grinding in the mementos, and just come back when you're ready to explore and hopefully set the next standard. You know, that's the beauty of this game. I mean, other games you're kind of rushed. You know, like Persona 3, they're rushing you to, you know, give it a timeline for the next operation. 4, it's got a mystery you gotta solve before everyone else dies. But here, as they say, take your time. And I played this game, it's definitely interesting, though the climbing one was like, oh god, okay, how do I look this? Yeah, it was annoying, but I think the story behind it really improves it in a way. What do you guys think? Let me know. Anywho, final 3, let's wrap it up. Alright.
Well, how about a dungeon that is Zelda? Unlike Sonic and Fire Emblem, The Legend of Zelda has
Yeah, it's
actually
mostly
had a
Gerudo.
great history with desert levels. There's a Sand Temple in Spirit Tracks, a Desert Palace from A Link Between Worlds, the Spirit Temple from Ocarina of Time, Lanayru Desert from Skyward Sword, the Lightning Temple from Tears of the Kingdom. You could even make a case for Ikana Valley from Majora's Mask. This wasn't easy. But I closed my eyes and tried to imagine myself in the classic green tunic surrounded by sand. And where was I? The Arbiter's Grounds from Twilight Princess. And the Gerudo Desert in general. I mean, it sets a precedent. Remember the happy, sunny energy of Gobi's Valley and the Kingdom of Solm? Well, forget all that. It's time for vague, uneasy fridge horror. The first thing you'll learn about Gerudo Desert in this game is that one does not simply
walk.
It's so locked off from humanity that the most logical way to get there is by cannon. And
Follow
the
up.
first thing you'll notice about Gerudo Desert once you're there, it's that it's sorely lacking any Gerudo. This is the game set after Ocarina of Time, when a younger Link and Zelda warned Hyrule's king about Ganondorf's treachery, and undoubtedly that killed any chance of peace with the desert dwellers. Did they migrate further away from Hyrule's borders as a result? Well, let's just say that that's the best case scenario. Standing in their place is a massive prison where Hyrule once kept the worst of its criminals to await either execution or banishment into the Twilight Realm, which is honestly just execution with more steps.
Pretty much.
The prison itself has been cracked by the passage of time. All that's left are the marauding Boblins desperate enough to make their home outside the prison walls, and the restless undead roaming its dusty halls. The first half of the dungeon is very reminiscent of Ocarina's Forest Temple, requiring you to hunt 4 Poes, this time by Wolfnose, and light a series of torches. All the while you'll be tiptoeing around the broken floors and quicksand attempting to swallow the building itself, all while fighting plenty of corpses. Yeah, did you miss the Redeads and Gyptos from the N64 era? Well, now they have Claymores!
Yikes!
How oppressive this environment is, you might be surprised by the sudden gear shift when you retrieve the dungeon item, the ever-underutilized spinner. Everybody loves this thing. No one's gotten enough of it.
Everything I can. Whee!
And this dungeon caps off with one of the best boss fights in the game, Stalord. A behemoth of bone, you step aboard your swiveling stallion, pinball around his femur phalanx, and spin into his spinal cord, followed by a high-octane race with his floating skull. When did this game become metal as hell? To get back to the lore, though, there's a lot of fan theories about this guy. Clearly, he's the skeletal remains of something, only reanimated by Zan's interference. Some fans speculate that this might be the remains of Volvagia, or King Dodongo, who we never saw perish in this timeline. There's merit to both theories, but what I find more evocative is why these bones are here in the first place. The interior of this prison takes a lot of inspiration from ancient Egypt, but we also see a lot of Roman Colosseum architecture. Was this a form of execution here? A trial by combat, perhaps? Where Gerudo war criminals were pitted against a giant dinosaur for entertainment? King Hyrule, you're a sick motherfucker. At any
mean,
rate,
it is
the Orbiter's
Ganondorf.
Grounds
Do you
is a
expect anything
standout
less?
dungeon from a game whose dungeons never really miss. And for bonus points, this Gerudo Desert also happens to contain the Cave of Ordeals, the hardest challenge in the game, and that's just something to sweeten the pot for you. And if you still prefer that another Zelda entry made it onto this spot, I honestly wouldn't blame you. The series loves its sand.
Oh, heads up. Number 2, we're almost there.
Those last 2 entries were a
Hi,
little
Kirby.
heavy, so let's lighten the mood. It's time to visit our old pal, Kirby.
Yay!
Granted, this means we're still going to
Hi.
talk about the remnants of a dead society. We're just going to play happy music over it.
So, Forgotten Land.
Original Wasteland is the 5th world of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. As the name suggests, this is the origin of life on the planet, but now it is null. Nothing. Empty.
Basically,
Fortunately for us,
Ocean.
Kirby has the awareness of a toddler and doesn't have to process the existential dread lingering around him. Now, it might seem surprising to see Kirby make it all the way to number 2 on this list. It's certainly not how I first envisioned it, but consider this a testament to
worse.
Forgotten Land's level design. Every single locale in this game is bursting with personality and just so much fun to explore, thanks to secret objectives that hit just the right balance between
Blueprints
cryptic
here.
and obvious. Original Wasteland gives us not 1, not 2, but 5 levels of grainy, desolate fun. You'd think that would make these stages repetitive, but au contraire. Each zone is completely different visually and structurally.
Unique
So
and
let's go through each stage in order.
plenty of ways.
Stage
First
1, the wastes where life began. Really driving the nail in there, eh, Hal? This is where we get our wide-open desert, our sandbox, if you will, where Kirby has to sweep the sand for 5 collectibles to move forward. There's a dust storm tightening the draw distance, but the land's just vast enough to make you think without it being needles in a haystack. Interestingly, you can see from the fossilized coral and the stranded boat that this used to be an ocean. Little bit of Lanayru Desert vibe going on here. The dust storm then passes for a very sunny stage 2, searching the oasis. Here we happen upon a resort hotel made up of adobe buildings, we take advantage of the new drill ability, and gorge ourselves on water to clean up toxic sludge. There's even a secret reward for napping by the pool. Stage 3 then takes us into a shopping mall, bit of a rehash of a past level, but it's a fun time regardless. I also like how the sun is setting now, as if this whole zone takes place over the course of one day. And then by stage 4, we've got the cold night of these lofty cliffs. And finally, stage 5, we meet our boss, a trash-hoarding rodent named Silly Dillo. He may be goofy looking, but he puts up a fight, trying to cage Kirby up and even employing his waifu who's literally trash. I love how he adjusts her face and lovingly boops her nose, and it took me a while to learn the timing to dodge their damn spin attack. So yeah, a lot of fun and a lot of variety all around, but again, why number 2? Well, by World 5, a lot of games would be getting stale, and following up the King Dedede fight and the kidnapping of Elfilin, I really wanted to get a move on rather than trudge through the obligatory desert levels. But to my surprise, Forgotten Land just keeps the hits coming with set piece after unique set piece, clever uses of mouthful mode, and inventive places to hide Waddle Dees. And now that the game has shown its hand as a post-apocalyptic world, Original Desert is free to be a little darker with its area names and lore. But it never stops being a good time either. This is the balance of tones Kirby spent 30 years perfecting, and not a single grain of sand is out of place.
Hey!
From compiling all these levels, I think I finally pinned down what it is that I want from a desert level. Sure, deserts are hot, deserts are dusty, and most importantly, deserts are vast and empty, which doesn't necessarily lend itself to engaging gameplay. Levels like Mirage Saloon, Gobi's Valley, and the Hourglass Twins circumvent this by shrinking the playing field and packaging the objectives closer together. And while that was the best move for those stages in particular, it does sort of diminish the feeling of possibility that you should get from looking over a mostly desolate land, wondering what secrets await over the next Doom. Still, I don't want to spend hours wandering with nothing to show for it. There's a quote from Yahtzee Croshaw that I think about a lot. I want my video game worlds to feel big, not just be big. My number 1 desert level is the one I feel best solves this equation of quantity versus quality. Let's sail for the Sand Kingdom.
Oh, Mario Odyssey!
Super Mario Odyssey is my favorite Mario title for a reason. It's a master of sandbox design, and not just the boxes with actual sand. Each kingdom is an unrestricted play area where you're free to collect power moons in pretty much any order you want.
Yep.
But the scope of each sandbox changes, and the game takes a few levels to make sure that you understand the mechanics first. Cap Kingdom and Cascade Kingdom have their fair share of things that you can do on Revisit.
Remember,
but your first
Sand
time there
Kingdom's
will
third
be
if you're playing it
directed
right,
towards
you know?
a specific goal. World 3 is when
Yep.
the game finally opens up, showing the true potential of Mario's Power Moon hunt. Sand Kingdom is in the running for the biggest world in the game, and holds the most Power Moons at nearly 100, most of which are available on your first visit if you're determined enough. And unlike Forest Kingdom or even New Donk City, there are almost zero bottomless pits. With the exception of one specific sector,
Well,
everything is
back
connected
there.
by one sprawling landscape, or floating above it, challenging you to find a way up. Everywhere the light touches is your
Is
Sand
yours
Kingdom.
to explore.
If you want to barrel straight to the main objective, sally forth.
yours.
It's a great objective. Cut through the picturesque Mexican-inspired town of adorable Calacas, make your way up the ruined pillars, and then beat up that bouncy Brutal. There's great platforming, you get to capture a bullet bill for the first time, which is one of my favorite abilities in the game, and you have more of these wall-clinging 2D segments that we first saw in Cascade Kingdom. In a fun twist, these sections on the inverted pyramid are, well,
inverted.
Having Mario platform across the ceiling. Very clever. After the main task, if you want to stick around, you can enter the pyramid, full of icy caverns where you can challenge Nintendo's favorite boss, the giant head and hands. Seems
Yep,
like this is
there
the
it
guy
is.
who's been raining ice chunks on the poor desert dwellers, probably in a rage after Bowser stole the giant diamond for his sham wedding. So once that's taken care of,
Bonk.
might we be done with the Sand Kingdom? Heck no.
No,
We don't
we're
play
not.
Odyssey for the bare minimum. Get out there and comb that desert. It may look huge, but Odyssey compensates for the large gaps by giving Mario some incredibly fun traversal options. There's the usual fast travel, obviously, but then there are these slopes that are perfect for Mario's new rolling ability, which he no doubt learned from his friend Sonic at the Olympic Games. Or you can hitch a ride on a Jaxi, these fast and furious felines that can cut clear through the poisonous ponds. Capture a bullet bill or a winged gecko to fly out into the distance, and explore to your heart's content. You can buy a poncho and a sombrero at the Tostarena boutique and party up with the locals. Go fishing as a Lokitu by the Oasis and save Captain Toad from an early grave. Riddle with a
hello.
Sphinx to begin a multi-kingdom running theme. Spelunk into these tombs and crypts. Follow a photorealistic dog to some buried treasure. Chase down this one shiny bird carrying a power moon. Herd sheep, plant seeds, sneak into the shop, legally gamble, and I haven't even mentioned the Maui heads with sunglasses. But I don't want you to think that I just picked the level with the most stuff. This amount of excess works because of Odyssey's underlying design philosophy. Set clever puzzles and reward clever solutions.
Pretty much.
Nintendo has long since proven
Rewards
that
for
they know how
exploration
to
here.
design a satisfying obstacle course, but Odyssey is perfectly fine with you finding your own solutions, even
See?
if they break the challenge here and there. Like the Koopa race, why not just hop on a Jaxi and win by a country mile? No one said that wasn't allowed. If you can get your
True.
long jumps right or bait a bullet bill to come towards you, you can hop over major parts of the main path. And this was the first time I had that experience of scaling a wall expecting to go out of bounds, only to find that the devs left coins for me in that exact spot like a calling card. Those cheeky dick waffles. It's not just about the breadth of the desert, it's about the
Yeah.
depth. And it's about actually coming through with the amount of opportunity that only a level of this size can inspire. I'm the Green Scorpion, and I'm naming the Sand Kingdom the
Well, the
greatest
greatest.
desert level in video games.
Yeah.
But what about you guys? Give me your favorite desert levels in the comments, and let me know what other level biomes I should tackle in the future. But for now, I am in
Is that
desperate
you?
need of some water.
I drink. I'm good. You good now? Yeah. What are you gonna do? You gotta love the deserts. Or in this case, the Sand Kingdom. It actually was pretty fun. Like, I completely forgot about that one, and that was just definitely a blast for me. And that's the beauty of Odyssey. Like, it's not like one straight line to the goal. You could do it in every way you want. You know? Just like an Odyssey. Think about it. Well, anyway, that's about it for this one. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.